Hi everyone, myself Mrs. M.Roslin Mangaiyarkarasi, M.Sc Nursing, Community Health Nursing Department, E.S College of Nursing. So today my presentation's topic is disease transmission. So in this topic, we are going to discuss about what is meant by disease and what is meant by transmission. So how will it occur? So how the causative agents spread from infectious agents spread from one person to another person. So these things are we are going to discuss in our topic today. So first, definitions of disease. Disease, a condition in which body health is impaired, a departure from a state of health, an alteration of human body interrupting the performance of vital functions. So it is nothing but the alterations of the human body, that is the vital functions are altered. So automatically the vital functions are altered, automatically the disease, the viruses are entry into our body. So the disease is called as disease. So it has divided into two. One is communicable and another one is non-communicable. Non-communicable disease. So it does not spread through infection or through the other people. So it is directly infected to people only, not through the other people but indirectly. So next, communicable disease. So all the illnesses due to a specific infectious agent or its toxic products and is capable of being directly or indirectly transmitted from man to man, animal to animal, or from environment to man or animal. That is, so in non-communicable disease is otherwise also a chronic diseases. The main types of non-communicable disease is hypertension, diabetic mellitus, cancer and cardiovascular diseases, etc. So it does not spread one person to another person. But in the communicable disease, it is easily spread to one person to another person. For example, tuberculosis, dengue, etc. So it is directly or indirectly transmitted from man to man or other. Next, modes of transmission of a communicable diseases. So in that modes of transmission, the modes depends upon the three agents. One is the infectious agent and portal of entry and local ecological conditions. So infectious agents means it's nothing but the agent that can cause infection or an infectious diseases. This is called as infectious agent. And then second thing, portal of entry. Portal of entry means how the infection enters another individual. That is the way. So this is called portal of entry. Then third one is the local ecological condition. Next, this is the chain of infection from the reservoir or sources, and it leads to the modes of transmission and then susceptible host. Source. Source means a person, animal, object or substance from which an infectious agent passes or is disseminated to host. So it means the infectious agents comes, arises or obtained. So this is called as source. Next, reservoir. So reservoirs is nothing but the natural habitat in which the organism metabolizes and replicates. So in other words called reservoir means personal, animal, plant and then substances in which an infectious agent normally lives and multiplies. So this is called as reservoir. So see how the infection spread from one person to another person easily. So next, classification. So in that, the classification of direct transmission is divided into two types. One is direct transmission and another one is indirect transmission. In under the direct transmission, direct contact, droplet infection and contact with soil, an inoculation into the skin or mucosa. Then transplacental transmission. This is the direct transmission. And indirect transmission, in under that indirect transmission, vehicle borne, vector borne, airborne, fomite borne, and unclean hands and fingers. So these are the classifications of transmission. So let me see one by one. First thing is direct transmission. So direct transmission is nothing but direct contact, that is skin to skin, then mucosa to mucosa, mucosa to skin, then direct and essentially an immediate transfer, and then no intermediate agencies. So direct transmission is, it occurs between the infected persons and the susceptible host. So it also reduces the period for which the organism will have to survive with the outside of the human host. In the transmission, they ensures the large doses of infection, like the example STD, and that is the sexual transmitted diseases, and AIDS, and leprosy, and leptospirosis, and then skin and eye infections. So next thing, droplet infections. So droplet infection is nothing but the spray of the droplets of the saliva and naropharyngeal secretions. It's directly impingement upon the conjunctiva, skin and inhalation, and enter into the ororespiratory mucosa. The limited distance of the 30 to 60 centimeter between the source and the host. So it also potentially increases with the overcrowding and the lack of ventilation and then close proximity. So it will leads to the respiratory infections and eruptive fevers like measles, diphtheria, tuberculosis, meningococcal meningitis. So these are called as the under the droplet infection. Next, contact with soil. So in that contact with soil, it is the direct exposure to the contaminated soil or soil with saprophytic organisms. So many of the children or agricultural persons are working in that or playing in the directly toward the contaminated soil. So it will leads to the hookworm larvae, tetanus and mycosis. So this is the contact with soil. Next, inoculation into the skin or mucosa. So inoculation means introducing the infectious agents onto abraded or absorptive skin surface. So see the dog bite and then needle stick injury. If the needle stick injury is occurred, immediately the injured part you have to wash. Do not squeeze that part. You have to show the injured part in the injured finger or injured part in the running tap water, and then consult with your doctors. Next, transplacental transmission. So it is definitely from the mother to the child. For a best example is torch agents. So T means toxoplasma and O means others like the varicella, syphilis, hepatitis B, and then AIDS. Then R means rubella, C means CMV, that is the cytomegalovirus, and H means herpes virus. So it also affected the uses of the non-living agents like the thalidomide. It will causes the embryonic malformation. So next we move on to the indirect transmission. So indirect transmission means it occurs when there is no direct human to human contact. So it requires an intermediate agent or an inanimate objects. The 5 F's are followed in the indirect transmission. One is the food and flies and fingers and fomites, and the 5th F is fluid. In the additional requirement, the capability to survive outside the host in the external environment and retain its basic properties of pathogenesis and virulence till it finds a new host. So in the indirect transmission, it depends upon the characteristics of agent, an inanimate object, and the influences of the environmental factors. So in under that the indirect transmission, the first one is the vehicle borne. When a vehicle touches a person, body or ingested. This is called a vehicle borne. For example, sharing the food, drinking water, and that shares some of the products. So that is the intermediate agents: water, food, ice, blood, serum, plasma, or other biological products such as the tissues and organs. The organisms may multiply or the develop or just get passively transmitted. For example, hepatitis A virus in water. So through the water and food, it leads to infections of the alimentary tract. Through the blood, it leads to the hepatitis B, malaria, syphilis, brucellosis, the infectious mononucleosis, cytomegaloviruses, etc. In move on to the organ transplantation, cytomegaloviruses infection through the kidney transplants. Next, vector borne. So vector is nothing but an arthropod. So or any living carrier that transport the infectious agents to the susceptible individual. The examples of the vector borne, that is the cyclops, bat, mice, etc. In that epidemiological classification by vector, in that two types. One is the invertebrate type and another one is the vertebrate type. In under that invertebrate type, diphtheria, that is flies and mosquitoes, then Syphonoptera, flares, and Arthroptera, cockroaches, then Anophlera, sucking lice, and Hemiptera, bugs, and Acrina, then the ticks and mites, and Copepoda, that is the cyclops. This is the invertebrate type. And another thing is the vertebrate type. The best examples of the vertebrate type is mice, rodents, and bats. Next, by transmission of chain. In the transmission of chain, there are the three ways. One is the man and a non-vertebrate host, and another thing is the man, another vertebrate host, and a non-vertebrate host. And third thing is man and two intermediate hosts. In under that man and a non-vertebrate host, man, arthropod, and again man. So it will lead to malaria. Then man, snail, and then man. This is cystomoyasis. Then second thing, mammal, arthropod, and man. It leads to the plague. Bird, arthropod, and man. So encephalitis will occur. Then man, cyclops, fish, and man. Fish, tapeworm. Then man, snail, crab, and then man. So it will lead to the paragonemiasis. So this is the by transmission chain. So by methods in which vectors transmit agents, only the four thing. One is the biting and regurgitation and scratching in of fecus and contaminations of the host with body fluids of vectors. And then by methods in which vectors are involved in the transmission and propagation of parasites. That is the two way. One is the mechanical and the biological. So mechanical is nothing but pickup of the infectious agents on the outside of its body and transmits in a passive manner. So this is called as mechanical agents. This is the soiling of feet or proboscis or by passages of organism through its GIT, that is the gastrointestinal tract, and the passively excreted. The best example is housefly. It will lead to the typhoid and dysentery, etc. Then biological transmission. So biological transmission is nothing but replication or development or both may take place. The three things propagative. Propagative is nothing but spreading. The example of the propagative, plague, bacilli in rat fleas. And then second thing is cyclopropagative. So cyclopropagative is nothing but organisms goes through the cyclical changes in the body. That is the malaria parasites in mosquito. The third thing is the cyclodevelopment. So cyclodevelopment, when the disease agents undergoes the cyclical changes but does not multiply in the body of the arthropod. So this is called as the cyclodevelopmental, and the best example is microfilaria in mosquito. So these are the influential factors, and the host feeding preferences and infectivity, susceptibility and the survival rate of factors and domesticity, and then suitable environmental factors. So these are the influential factors. And the next thing, formate-borne. So formate-borne is nothing but the contaminated objects or infectious discharges from the agent. It will affect the transferring to the healthy person. So in animate objects or substances other than the water or food contaminated by the infectious discharges from a patient and capable of harboring and transferring the infectious agents to a healthy person. So it's nothing but the infectious agents transferring the infectious agents to the healthy person. For best example, diphtheria, typhoid and bacillary dysentery. The next thing is airborne. So airborne is nothing but commonly viruses and bacteria transmitted through the small respiratory droplets, the teeny particles that represents the dried residue of droplets. For example, tuberculosis, influenza, chickenpox and measles. So the next thing, dust. So it's settling down of the large droplets. It may become the airborne. So mainly nosocomial infection. So nosocomial infection is nothing but infections that develop while the person is receiving the medical attention. So this is called as the nosocomial infections. Example, pneumonia, tuberculosis. The final thing is unclean hands and fingers. So mainly the unclean and hands and fingers, it will occur because of the lack of personal hygiene. In 1984, dysentery epidemic in India because of the lack of personal hygiene. So in that lack of personal hygiene, we don't follow the some of the methods, that is the hand washing techniques, and before going to eat, wash hands, vegetables washing. These are all not followed by ours. That is unclean hands and fingers. The best example is intestinal parasites, typhoid and dysentery. So next we move on to the prevention and how to control the transmission of infection. So the first thing is destroying the organisms. In destroying the organisms is nothing but by cleaning and disinfecting. In the dirty equipment and surfaces, it need to be thoroughly cleaned with appropriate germicidal agents and allowed to air dry between the patients. In the germicidal agents is nothing but to kill the organisms, that is to kill the germs. The best examples of the germicidal is formaldehyde, alcohol and the chlorine. It will preventing the growth or action of the microorganisms. Automatically it kills the germs. And then second thing is water treatment and clean practices. In under that clean practices, main thing is hand washing, adequate cooking and proper storages of cooked foods and withdrawal of contaminations. For before using the vegetables and other fruits, wash thoroughly with hot water and then used. The proper storages is very important in clean practices. Then third thing is the vector control. In vector control, uses some of the mosquito liquids and that sprays. So to control the vector, automatically the transmission will not occur. Then hand washing is the main thing to prevent the infection. Then wearing the PPE, that is personal protective equipment, and using the engineering controls like sharp containers. So see the steps of clean hands. The first thing is the wet hands with water and apply the soap, and third thing is the rub hands palm to palm, and the fourth thing is right palm over the left dorsum with interlocked fingers and that vice versa. And then next step, palm to palm with fingers interlaced, then interlocked, and then rotational, then nailing, and then rinse hands with water and dry thoroughly with the single uses of towel, and use towel to turn off the faucet. So see, now the hands are safe. So stopping the transmission using the engineering controls. The engineering controls means equipment and techniques specific to preventing the exposure. The examples of the engineering control is sharp containers, so uses the safety needles, and then ambulance ventilation. So it will prevent the transmissions of the engineering using the engineering controls. Words of wisdom. If it's wet and not yours, don't touch it. If you think you have touched it, report it immediately. Don't go around exposing yourself. Your job is tough enough. Thank you.